Hi, this is the Business Guy. So what's it like to retire on $1 million? And whether you're young or old, this video is for you. Many Americans dream of saving $1 million for retirement.
$1 million.
But most fall short of that. The typical family's 401k and IRA type account come to less than half that goal in the years approaching retirement age.
Retirement age? Yes.
According to the nonprofit Employee Benefit Research Institute, total household balances in retirement accounts for those 55 to 64 years old are $413,814 for the average American, according to its estimates based on the latest data.
Wow.
So I was reading this article in the Wall Street Journal about what it's like to retire on $1 million or less, and I wanted to share it with you.
Really?
Now, there's nothing magical about $1 million, but there is something magical when you hit the like button because YouTube will promote this video, and I'd really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe so you'll be up to date right away when more videos like this one come out.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Now, you may be close to retirement age or far from it, but the only one who's going to take care of that old person you'll be someday is the younger person you are right now. After all, who else is going to show up? It's up to you, baby. So watch until the end because I can guarantee you'll be motivated to earn more and save more when you see what these people are going through. After all, the less one saves, the bigger the risks that unforeseen shocks or the setbacks of life can derail your plans. Retiring on less than $1 million can bring greater anxiety.
Have is anxiety.
About outliving your money, say retirees and financial advisors. For many, the expectation of retirement doesn't match the facts of their everyday financial lives, says Larry Raffone, chief executive of Edelman Financial Engines. So what does retiring with less than $1 million look like? To find out, we're going to look at 4 retirees with savings ranging from $240,000 to $800,000. They describe what keeps them up at night, health, hurricanes and heating bills, and what has brought the greatest joys to these years. Dana and Elsie Jones. Savings and investments, $411,000. Annual spending, $50,000. Dana and Elsie Jones hope to become snowbirds in retirement, living half the year in Florida. Now, due to health problems, the couple remain full-time residents of Holton, Maine, a town of about 6,000 people that's a few miles south of the Canadian border. It's a community that's like a
Family,
says Mrs. Jones, 75, a former billing clerk at a local power and water company who used to phone neighbors personally when she saw their water bill spike to suggest checking for leaks. Now, some find that overwhelming or nosy, but that's just the way we do it in a small town, she said. Mr. Jones, 70, retired in 2017 as a respiratory therapist at Holton's Hospital. Mrs. Jones retired a year later. The couple intended to spend winters in Florida near the grandchildren, but around the time that Mr. Jones retired, he began experiencing cognitive problems, making travel difficult. In 2020, Mrs. Jones was diagnosed with melanoma in her eye. Our retirement plan certainly changed from what we initially envisioned, said Mrs. Jones, who is now cancer-free.
Cancer-free.
Mr. Jones' retirement account took a hit in 2008 and never recovered. Spooked by the S&P 500's 38.49% decline in 2008, he sold his stocks and invested in a stable value fund that earned about 1% per year, said the couple's son-in-law, John Older, a doctor who's managed their portfolio since 2018. Dr. Older moved 35% of the balance into low-cost stock index funds and the rest into an intermediate treasury bond index fund. Worth $129,000 in March 2018, the balance rose to $146,000 in September 2020, but is now $111,000 due to the market's downturn and withdrawals for items such as car and roof repairs. The couple plans to use the rest of the money for unexpected expenses. Each month, they earn $2,500 in Social Security, plus Mrs. Jones' $1,877 pension, the current value of which is about $300,000. They live in a 13-room Victorian house they purchased in 1997 for about $37,000. A relic of Holton's timber baron days, it has hardwood floors, 10-foot ceilings, and a grand piano that Mr. Jones, a former church choir director, played before his health declined. To save on heating bills, the Joneses turned down the thermostat to 60 degrees in the winter
It's too cold.
and mainly live in 2 rooms they heat with a pellet stove and a heat pump. They put $600 a month into their house account to cover expenses including home insurance, the property tax bill, and their heating bill, which runs about $2,500 a year. They donate $400 a month to their church, spend $350 a month on groceries, and owe $300 a month on a $30,000 home equity loan. While the couple enjoys eating out, they say many of Holton's restaurants closed during the pandemic and haven't reopened. Mrs. Jones grew up in a nearby farm with sheep, cows, and fresh vegetables, but no indoor plumbing. We were poor, but didn't know we were poor, she said. She studied to be a teacher, but returned to the Holton area to work in a plywood mill when her mother got sick. She also helped harvest neighbors' potato fields. They own 3 acres bordering the land that Mrs. Jones grew up on. I'd like to put a little cabin there beside my mother's property, she said. Janet Gottlieb Sallan. Savings and investments, $240,000. Annual spending, $38,000. Janet Gottlieb Sallan says a sailing trip she took from Canada to the Bahamas after 9/11 prepared her for the ups and downs of retirement. While living on a 37-foot boat, she and her former husband encountered 30-knot winds, the wreckage of Ground Zero while passing Manhattan, and the calm blue water in the Caribbean. It's important to be flexible and resilient, said Miss Sallan, age 70. Sometimes you start out with plan A or B, but you end up with plan C or D. Every day is an adventure. Since retiring in 2019, the dual citizen of the US and Canada has navigated the pandemic and inflation. The stock market downturn wiped away 20% of her nest egg, which is now worth about $240,000. The decline is very alarming, said Miss Sallan, who said the weak Canadian dollar has reduced the amount she gets converting her savings to US dollars. I don't look at my holdings often. It's not good for my mental health. A bigger blow came in September when Hurricane Ian destroyed swaths of her Fort Myers Beach, Florida home, where Mrs. Sallan lives half the year with her partner, Mark LeBlanc, 77, in a home he owns. The couple's second-floor living quarters was spared, but the storm destroyed the ground floor apartment, a garage, 2 cars, and damaged a pool cage. Again, it's plan B and C. What we thought our retirement was going to be was just upended, said Mrs. Sallan, who typically divides her time between Florida, Nova Scotia, and Toronto, where she babysits her grandsons ages 4 and 9. With her life in flux, Mrs. Sallan canceled her regular spring trip to Toronto. She said she normally spends about $38,000 a year, but is cutting costs. Her monthly income consists of $1,400 from Social Security and Canada's equivalent, and $1,400 a month from her retirement accounts. Last year, Miss Sallan, a former communications director at an independent school, a university and education associates, earned $5,000 in freelancing in that field. She hopes to work more this year. She's also a co-author with Mr. LeBlanc on a book about his life, and she also writes for a Canadian magazine and is on the board of Estero Island Historical Society in the Fort Myers Beach. She and another board member are trying to restore the organization's archives and centuries-old building and are organizing an exhibit for the fall. In addition to paying $1,000 a month to Mr. LeBlanc toward housing costs, Mrs. Sallan spends about $1,000 on groceries and utilities, up from $800. She recently bargained the couple's monthly cable and cell phone bills to $300 from $400 and cut her restaurant budget to $70 a month from $150. To save on gas, she and Mr. LeBlanc drive to the grocery store only on days when they pick up their mail nearby. There's no frivolous driving around, she said. She plans to spend $2,000 on airfare this year, down from $4,000. When in Toronto, she rents an apartment for about $1,500 a month. Mrs. Sallan said that she and Mr. LeBlanc, both married and divorced
twice,
keep their money separate. She said she may receive an inheritance from her mother, 99, but isn't counting on it. Jordan Modell, savings and investments, $158,000, plus about $600,000 in rental properties. Annual spending, $80,000. Jordan Modell keeps almost as packed of a schedule in retirement as he did when working long hours as head of data and analytics for a large advertising agency, with one difference. I answer only to myself, said Mr. Modell, age 63. He's pursuing a doctorate in theology and philosophy for his own enjoyment. The online program, which costs him about $4,000 a year, keeps him busy with hundreds of pages of reading each week and writing several 20-page papers every semester. In the late summer and early fall, Mr. Modell volunteers about 15 to 20 hours a week organizing a music festival in Ashbury Park, New Jersey, where he lives. When he's not planning Ashbury Park Porch Fest, he and his girlfriend might catch a live band at a local establishment. Mr. Modell is using his retirement to pursue his long-held dream of being a landlord to to low-income tenants. About 7 years ago, after he retired, he withdrew about $600,000 from his portfolio and bought 5 houses in lower-income areas of New Jersey. The Section 8 rentals generate about $80,000 a year after taxes and income. Tenants sometimes call to request an extension on their portion of the rent, but also to ask his advice about relationship problems or to seek referrals to food banks. Responding to tenants' requests can sometimes feel like a full workday, he said. The divorced father of 2 has about $158,000 invested in a brokerage account and has a mortgage on the Ashbury Park apartment where he lives. His working-class upbringing in Harlem, New York taught him to live simply, he said.
Simple.
Mr. Modell thinks he has mastered frugal travel and entertaining by traveling off-peak, using Airbnb, and eating what the locals eat wherever he is. He said he also has mastered the art of nursing a beer for 2 hours while watching music.
You want music? Watch and learn.
Mr. Modell lives off the $80,000 in rental income and spends about $13,000 of it on travel every year, his passion. He travels at least 1 week a month for leisure and has visited 104 countries. Recent stop, Coruscant, an island in Micronesia. His domestic travel is often free as he does consulting work for nonprofits in exchange for room and board.
Whoa, awesome!
He has no credit card debt or auto loans for his 2 cars. He pays about $10,000 a year to insure his properties and vehicles. His advice for other retirees seeking their purpose? Don't sit around or expect one hobby or organization to fulfill all of your needs. Retirees have the ability to work with the organizations they choose, and they should try something else if they aren't happy. Retirement gives you the freedom to walk away, he said. Chris Ravina, savings and investments, $800,000. Annual spending, $20,000. Chris Ravina started working around age 17 and spent most of his career as a tool and die maker. He expected to keep it until age 65, but changed his mind a few years ago and retired at 60 from a factory job. His father had recently died of COVID-19, and the heightened political climate at work changed during the pandemic, making it seem time. Calling it quits proved harder than he imagined. Not having a job is a big adjustment, he said. At first, he continued to get up at dawn as though he still had to make the 6 a.m. shift. Eventually, he managed to start waking around 9 a.m. and will now sometimes stay up until midnight watching television. He often starts his day doing some projects around the house in Bloomington, Indiana, a home he purchased 40 years ago for about $33,000. The original mortgage he had a 13% interest rate, which he refinanced around 6% about a decade ago and soon paid off. He estimates his home is now worth about $150,000. Mr. Ravina is single and has no children.
No children?
He earned about $50,000 a year from his factory job and always aimed to save at least 20% of his income, largely by keeping his expenses low. He wears his clothes for decades and he rarely purchases new ones, though he treated himself to some new socks last July. I get buyer's remorse real quick, he said. He spends about $20,000 a year with the bulk of the money going to his car and his home insurance. He mostly cooks at home, he doesn't travel, and has no debt. Mr. Ravina saved about $800,000, mostly in a 401k, which is invested in the stock market with about 60% in stock, 40% in bonds. He likes to buy stocks during the stock market downturns, such as 2008, and he hopes to finish building a motorcycle he started about 15 years ago, and spends his free time watching YouTube videos on how to construct the bike. He's also thinking about adopting a dog from a nearby shelter.
How much to adopt a dog?
After seeing his late mother suffer dementia, Mr. Ravina worries about his future as a single person should he develop a memory issue. He's counting on his community to help if need be. I've got great neighbors, so hopefully it all works out, he said. So that's what it's like to retire on $1 million or less when the employment dollar stops rolling in. So keep earning, keep saving. Please like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. This is The Business Guy.